Hey guys, Churchy here. So about a week ago I released a video talking about what I would love to see in Outward 2. And in that video I did briefly mention how I would love to see some kind of fast travel, and I wasn't really sure what that would look like. But in this video I want to basically talk about fast travel. I've been thinking a bit more about it, and this video will basically be me talking about a possible way that I think they could implement it that would be pretty cool and kind of keep with the theme of Outward, of being like a normal person just kind of like setting out and fighting stuff and having to really kind of work for what you get, basically. So you can see my crappy little drawing here. This is just to kind of demonstrate my points and what I want to talk about. But basically, for this system to work, effectively it would start out that the caravanners, like the Soroborian caravanners, would pretty much be locked down in whatever city they're in. So they'd be like the usual, like you see them in the city, but they're not traveling anywhere, they're not going anywhere, and you can't find them out in the wild, and they're not trading stuff around really, and their supplies are very, very bad to begin with, is how it would be. And then basically part of the story would pretty much be that there's like outposts that they had along the way between regions, and those outposts have all been overrun by bandits, or it could be any other faction really, but bandits is an easy one to make work. And then maybe basically you'd pick up a quest from one of the caravanners that would be just basically be like, hey, if we want to re-establish trade and stuff and get our caravans rolling again, we really need to clear these outposts out. And then we can re-establish our caravan network. So then basically there'd be a series of steps that you go through on this quest. So that's basically how it would be presented to you. You would get a quest to re-establish the caravans. And to start with, so say we started here and we picked up the quest and we wander out, and then we go to the outpost. And then the outpost basically acts like a dungeon sort of thing, like a just filled with a bunch of bandits. And then there's basically a boss to fight. So you clear out the bandits. So that's the first thing you have to do. You need to make sure you clear out all the bandit enemies, and then you have to defeat the bandit boss in the region. And then in each region, the boss would get harder. Like it would be tougher, and just tougher kind of bandits in the further out, more harsh regions. So then you've cleared the outpost, you've defeated the boss in the region of the outpost boss in the region. Then you go back to the city, talk to the caravaner, and then you pay 500 silver, and that will help the caravaner re-establish that particular outpost in the region. So then once you've re-established the outpost in the region, you basically would be able to go there, and there'd be a couple of guards and maybe like a basic merchant that's just kind of hanging out at the region outpost, and he's a very, very basic kind of very, very limited supplies of stuff. But it then also unlocking what the outpost would do is let you possibly see the caravaner like you do in the first game, just somewhere along the roads and stuff, somewhere out in the region. Usually, in this case, it would be like along the roads is how I would kind of stick it to that. But basically, that's the two sides of that. And then on top of that, it would unlock the chance for the caravaner and the outpost merchant to have ingredients or items from that region. And then as you unlock more, like once you've got all of the outposts and stuff unlocked, basically the caravaner merchant and the outpost merchants that you can see would have a chance. Like they won't always have it, but then ideally they'd have a chance to have ingredients from every region where you've unlocked the outpost. So if you've got them all, then a merchant here could possibly have some ingredient or item from this region or that one, and so on. And then one other little extra that could be fun is just being able to pay 500 silver extra, like to add guard patrols basically to the roads, which would just mostly be kind of just for fun of just seeing guards patrolling. But then there could be the fun little element of like you can lure stuff to the road to fight the guards and stuff. So the key thing is once you've unlocked all the outposts, that would be when the next phase has basically happened, where you've completed that phase and it allows you to do what you can sort of do in the Three Brothers DLC of Outward 1, which is where you can like go from when you build the caravan place at the New Sirocco or whatever, when you make that city, when you build your own city, you can build a caravaner and then they'll randomly basically select a town and go to it. in this case, it would pretty much be the same, but it would be like, if you see a caravaner at the city or you happen to see one at an outpost, you can talk to them and then be like, hey, I'd like to travel with you. And then they'll go where they're going. You don't get to choose, but basically you can pay silver and rations and join them on their journey and then fast travel to wherever they were headed anyway. So basically, yeah, that's just that kind of fast travel. But then the other thing that would happen, which would be kind of fun, is when all the outposts are completed, when you have cleared them all and paid all the caravanners to re-establish the outposts. So when all outposts are re-established, then you'd also maybe be able to find a Pearlbird breeder, just an NPC at one of the cities or outposts, wherever kind of works best for the game, wherever it makes sense would be where this NPC spawns. And basically, the Pearlbird breeder pretty much would tell you about a large breed of Pearlbird that he's seen, whether it would be called Pearlbird or something else, because I know there's like the jewel birds in the desert in like Abrasar region and stuff, but whatever kind of bird it's called, it's the same kind of family of birds. But it would pretty much be him saying like, hey, there's this large breed of Pearlbird that I've seen out and about, and look, if we manage to breed these, we could establish a way for people to travel the land quickly. All I'd have to do is breed them and set up a network of stables at the various cities and outposts around the lands. But to do that, I'll need 5 eggs, 5 of these large Pearlbird eggs, and I'm going to need a bit of silver to get started. So then basically he gives you like the next phase of the quest, which would be to set out and find 5 large Pearlbird eggs for the breeder to use, basically. And these would pretty much be spread across the regions. So I'll just draw like a few little, these are just little eggies. Egg. But you get it. So there's like, basically one in each region or whatever, and then spread around the place. But the idea would kind of be that you can have already encountered these large Pearlbirds and you can already have collected their eggs. But they'd kind of be ideally in somewhat out of the way places. So it would pretty much be a little bit of a search on your first playthrough to kind of get them. But then the idea with that being that on later playthroughs, you kind of have already established where they are. So it's a lot easier to just go and make sure you've got them all. But the large Pearlbirds would kind of also be quite, well, ideally fairly powerful, kind of like a mini boss, not necessarily like as full blown as a boss, but pretty much like a powerful enemy that's viciously going to protect their nests so that you can't get their egg. But then, yeah, you basically go out, you collect these 5 eggs, or you've already collected them, whatever, however it would work out for you. And then you pretty much bring those back to the breeder, and then he would pretty much be like, hey, cool, now you've given me the eggs, now I'm going to need some silver. And that might be like 1,000 silver, or it could be more depending on like the game's economy and stuff, whether it's like 2,000 or whatever. But 1,000 just working off the other numbers I've been giving so far. But pretty much then you give him the eggs, you give him the 1,000 silver, and then he says, all right, cool, I'll get to work. And then after some amount of time has elapsed, this could be kind of quite a while. Maybe it's just to kind of make it feel really great when it does happen. But so it could be like, I don't know, a couple of weeks of game time, at least maybe. But basically the breeder then contacts you, or you return to them, and they pretty much explain like, hey, I've established a network of these large Pearlbird stables at the different cities and the outposts across the regions. And they'd be happy to basically, at this point, offer you the traveling services. Like, so this breeder guy / Pearlbird travel guy would basically be like, hey, I'm going to offer you my services at a discount. It's, which then means that you can travel wherever, but you're still paying a small amount of silver to travel and still spending rations. So basically you can choose which outpost or city you want to go to, and pay him a small amount of silver, which would be smaller than what you pay the caravanners to join them. But again, you're still using your rations and stuff. And then that would basically mean over time, you've unlocked 2 different layers of fast travel. The first one being the more limited one, where you've still got to put in a bit of effort because you've got to clear those outposts and you've got to pay silver to re-establish those outposts. So depending on the number of like cities and stuff and caravanners and outposts, the amount you spend could vary. But pretty much then once you've got that re-established, you've got the more limited fast travel, but you've also got the benefit of like the merchants that you can kind of check and see, oh, maybe they've happened to have a cool item from over here that I wanted or whatever. And then you've also got, that chance of seeing caravanners on the road again. And then once you get the eggs and you unlock the Pearlbird breeder stage and the network of stables, then you've got that more powerful version of fast travel where you're paying a little bit less silver because you help the guy out, but you're still using your rations and stuff. But now you have the option of, rather than just choosing to, join the caravanners and go wherever they were already heading, you can choose wherever you'd like to go, which can be quite powerful. But also ideally, because you've had to put in a lot of work and effort over time, you've kind of already explored the regions on foot somewhat. So the fast travel is kind of unlocking at a more mid to later sort of stage of the game. And then on top of that fast travel reward from the breeder, like once you have handed in the Pearlbird eggs and the silver and then have unlocked the travel network, basically an extension to that reward could be that the breeder gives you your own large Pearlbird egg that you can eventually hatch, and then that can become a mount. So this is very, this one's 100% not necessary. Mounts, a very touchy topic, can definitely be something that's really hard to balance around. But in this context, as an extension of this massive fast travel quest that you've kind of gone through, I think it might work out, particularly depending on when you're actually given access to the mount. So I'll kind of talk about this briefly, but basically what I'm thinking is that this egg, it does kind of eventually hatch, but when it does hatch, it would kind of be after certain mid to late game conditions are kind of met. So it could be something like, maybe it hatches after a certain amount of time, but it's a runt and it needs just like extra nutrition and stuff to grow up strong. And then that requires kind of feeding it some later game ingredients. So it might be stuff that sort of has already required you to kind of travel around to the different regions and maybe get like, I don't know, something fairly rare from each of them. And then you basically feed these different later sort of game, not necessarily end game or anything, but just sort of later game, harder to get ingredients. You kind of feed those to it. Or it could be stuff that's kind of like locked behind a certain thing that's only going to happen in the later stages of the game. But basically, once you've got a few of these ingredients and you feed it these ingredients, then it becomes big and strong, and finally you can use it as a mount. But ideally, the stage where you would unlock this mount would kind of be in the later stages of the game. So you've already pretty much experienced traveling the world on foot, and maybe you've done most of the main quest lines and stuff, and you're just kind of working towards some of the endgame stuff. Like maybe you're getting towards that stage where you're looking at fighting endgame bosses, and you've just got like a couple more main quests to do and like a couple more side quests or whatever it is. But basically set this up so it lines up with, you've done all these travel quests, you've got the fast travel all unlocked, and still over time you've like hatched your egg and you've fed your creature, your Pearlbird, and finally it's a mount. But that's all lined up with the later stage of the game, moving towards endgame. So you've already, by the point that you unlock it, you've already had the great experience of going around and seeing all the stuff and doing all the bits and pieces on foot. And then ideally as well, because at least in the case of like having to go and get rarer ingredients, it's the same thing again with, on your first playthrough, that might be harder to find and do. But then on subsequent playthroughs, you already kind of know where to go and what ingredients to get. So you know you need to collect these eggs, you know you need to go and get certain ingredients. So it's much quicker on the subsequent playthroughs, which then ties in with it being like even more convenient on the next playthrough, because it's easier to get it. And then by that point, by the time you're on like your second, third, fourth, whatever playthroughs, you've probably well and truly like understood the world and walked around on foot and done a lot of fun stuff. And then you've got the option to basically go and get this mount. But again, the entire mount idea, that's just like an extra extension of this idea and system. The core fundamental is that the couple, like multi-stage, two-stage fast travel, basically. The unlocking, the re-establishing the outposts, and then being able to travel with the caravanner wherever they're already heading. And then the gathering of the eggs, investment with the breeder to make Pearlbird stables, and then getting to use that travel network that you've helped invest in for a cheaper price, while still using travel rations, and then being able to just choose which outpost or city you want to go to. They're the cores, and then the extension is just the mount. So anyway, that is pretty much the concept that I came up with. I don't know, it sounds alright to me. Sounds like it would be pretty fun, and it is. I feel like it would be very outward, and just in terms of like, you really have to like work to get it, because you've got to go and fight, clear outposts, fight bosses, do stuff that's like fairly difficult, potentially, or at the very least you have to work for. And then you're kind of still, even when you've unlocked it, it's still a system where you have to pay with silver and you have to use rations. And then even the end part with the having the network, the Pearlbird, large Pearlbird network, even that you'd still be paying a little bit of silver and stuff. So it's, yeah. Anyway, let me know what you think of that idea, whether you love it or hate it, or whatever your thoughts are, or if you've got an idea for how they could do fast travel in Outward too. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day or night, whichever it may be, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.